I remember the exact moment I decided to learn English seriously. It was a cold morning in January, and I was watching a video online where a young man gave a speech in perfect English. I didn't understand every word, but I could feel the passion, the confidence, and the power of his voice. At that moment, I felt something awaken inside me, a strong desire to speak just like him. I had tried to study English before, many times actually, but I always quit after a few weeks. This time, I told myself things had to be different. I gave myself a goal. I would learn to speak English fluently in just 3 months. At first, people laughed when I told them. They said, 3 months? That's impossible. People study for years and still struggle. But I wasn't looking for their approval. I was looking for results. I knew I had a long way to go. I started by analyzing what I had done wrong in the past. I realized I had focused too much on grammar rules and translation. Every time I read something in English, I translated it into my native language. That was slowing me down. So I made a decision. I would stop translating and start thinking directly in English. I didn't know how yet, but I was determined to find a way. I created a strict but exciting daily plan. Every morning, I listened to English podcasts while I brushed my teeth and made breakfast. Instead of watching TV in my language, I switched to watching English shows with subtitles. I read children's books in English at first, then moved to simple novels. I kept a notebook where I wrote down new words, but instead of just writing translations, I wrote short sentences with each word to understand how it was used. At night, I practiced speaking alone in front of a mirror, pretending I was talking to someone. It felt silly at first, but over time, I noticed my confidence growing. One of the biggest challenges I faced during those early days was self-doubt. Some days, I felt like I wasn't making any progress at all. I would forget words I had just learned, or I couldn't understand a sentence even after listening to it 3 times. But I told myself, fluency is not perfection, it's progress. I started measuring success differently. Instead of asking, did I speak perfectly today? I asked, did I speak more confidently than yesterday? That small change in mindset kept me motivated even on hard days. Every mistake became a lesson, and every small one became fuel to keep going. By the end of the first month, something incredible happened. I found myself dreaming in English, not every night and not perfectly, but it was a sign. My brain was starting to accept English as part of my daily life. I no longer felt like I was studying a foreign language. I felt like I was building a new part of myself, a new identity that could think, speak, and live in English. I knew there was still a lot of work ahead, but I had proof that it was possible. If 1 month could make this much difference, what could happen in 2 more? Chapter 2, The Power of Immersion. During the second month, I decided to fully immerse myself in the English language. I stopped listening to music in my native language and replaced it with English songs. I listened carefully to every lyric and even tried to sing along, repeating the same songs over and over until I could understand most of the words without reading the lyrics. Music made learning enjoyable and emotional, and I noticed that certain expressions started to stick in my head without effort. I also joined online forums where people discussed topics I enjoyed technology, travel, and self-improvement, but I only participated in the English sections. At first, I made mistakes when I wrote comments, but people were kind and helped correct me, which made me improve even more. I also began using my phone entirely in English. Every app, every setting, every menu. I forced myself to navigate the digital world in English. This helped me think faster because I had to connect words with actions and outcomes. For example, when I saw settings, I had to remember what it meant, what it did, and how to use it. This small change trained my brain to stop depending on translation and start recognizing words through usage. I also kept a small notebook with me everywhere I went. Whenever I heard or read a new word, I wrote it down with a simple sentence in English. Reviewing those notes at night became a ritual that helped me memorize vocabulary faster than ever before. One of the most effective things I did was to speak with myself throughout the day. It might sound strange, but it worked wonders. I described everything I was doing out loud in English. I'm washing the dishes. Now I'm getting dressed. I feel tired but happy. At first it was slow, and I had to think a lot. But with practice, the sentences became more automatic. This practice turned passive vocabulary into active speaking skills. It also helped me notice which words I needed most often. If I didn't know how to say something common, I would search for it, learn it, and practice it until it became natural. Halfway through the second month, I found a language exchange partner online. His name was Michael, and he was learning Spanish while I was learning English. We agreed to talk for 30 minutes each day, 15 minutes in English and 15 in Spanish. Our conversations were simple at first, full of pauses and corrections, but I loved them. Speaking to a real person made me realize how important conversation is for fluency. I began looking forward to our chats, preparing phrases beforehand, and listening carefully to how he responded. Every conversation gave me more courage to keep going, even when I stumbled. By the end of the second month, I felt transformed. I wasn't fluent yet, but I was no longer a beginner. I could hold a conversation, describe my day, and even explain my opinions in simple words. I had reached a point where English wasn't just something I was learning. It was something I was living. Every day, I was surrounded by the language, using it, thinking in it, and feeling connected to it. I had created an English world around me, and that world was changing the way I saw myself. I started to believe, truly believe, that I was going to succeed. Chapter 3, Breaking the Fear Barrier. The third month was the most exciting and also the most challenging. I had made huge progress, but now I had to break through the fear of speaking in real-life situations. I still made grammar mistakes. I still forgot words sometimes. But the real problem wasn't my knowledge. It was my confidence. So I gave myself a new challenge. Talk to one stranger in English every day. Whether online or in person, I had to start a real conversation. It didn't matter if it was short or if I got nervous. What mattered was doing it. The first few times were scary. My heart beat fast. My mouth went dry and I doubted myself. But I did it anyway. One day, I met a tourist who needed directions. I took a deep breath and offered to help in English. I made a few mistakes while giving directions, but he understood me and even smiled. That moment felt like winning a gold medal. It was small, but it meant everything. I realized that people weren't judging me the way I feared. Most of them were just happy I was trying. This gave me the courage to keep pushing myself. I started going to cafes where tourists gathered and offered to help them order or find places. Every interaction was practice, and every practice made me stronger. I also recorded myself speaking about different topics. I would choose a subject like my favorite movie or why I want to speak English and talk for 2 or 3 minutes nonstop. Then I listened to the recording and analyzed it. Did I use the right words? Did I repeat myself too much? Did I sound natural? It was difficult to hear my mistakes, but it was also powerful. Recording myself helped me track my improvement and correct my weak points. Over time, I sounded more fluent and less robotic. My words flowed more naturally, and I started to feel proud of how far I had come. Another key to building confidence was surrounding myself with supportive people. I joined English-speaking groups online, where learners like me shared tips, struggles, and progress. I posted videos of myself speaking and received encouragement and advice. I realized I wasn't alone. Many people were on the same journey. This made me feel part of a community. When you know others believe in you, it's easier to believe in yourself. And when you see others succeed, it reminds you that you can succeed too. I started lifting others up as well, helping beginners with their doubts, just like I had been helped. By the end of the 3rd month, something incredible had happened. I wasn't just learning English. I was speaking it, not perfectly, but confidently. I could talk about my life, express my thoughts, and understand native speakers. People who had once laughed at my goal were now asking how I did it. My answer was simple. I lived English every single day. I made it part of my life. I faced my fears, practiced nonstop, and believed it was possible. The 3-month challenge had changed not only my language skills, but also my mindset forever. Chapter 4, New Life, New Opportunities. As the 3rd month ended, I started to see how learning English was changing more than just my ability to communicate. It was opening doors I had never imagined. I applied for a part-time job that required English, something I wouldn't have dared to do 3 months before. During the interview, I spoke clearly, confidently, and naturally. The manager was surprised when I told him how long I had been studying. "Only 3 months?" he asked. "That's impressive." I got the job. That moment proved to me that this wasn't just a personal challenge anymore. It was the start of a new life. With my improved English, I began watching advanced content, motivational speeches, business talks, and documentaries. I understood more than 70% without subtitles. I realized I was no longer studying English. I was using it to learn about other things. English had become a tool, not a subject. I started reading books on topics I loved, expanding both my language and my knowledge. It felt like I had been blind before, and now I could finally see. So many resources, so many voices, so many ideas were now available to me. Just because I had worked hard and refused to give up, I also started helping others. Friends and family who had seen my transformation asked me how they could do the same. I created a simple plan and shared my story with them. I told them to focus on daily practice, real communication, and mindset. I even started a small online group where we practiced speaking once a week. Helping others reminded me of how far I had come. I wasn't just a student anymore. I was becoming a mentor that gave me a new sense of purpose and pride. English was no longer just a goal. It was now part of my identity. Emotionally, I felt stronger than ever. Learning English had taught me discipline, patience, and resilience. I had faced fear, frustration, and doubt, and I had overcome them all. Every conversation, every sentence, every new word had built a stronger version of me. I learned that language is not just about grammar and vocabulary. It's about expressing yourself, understanding others, and connecting with the world. And once you unlock that power, nothing feels impossible anymore. I didn't just learn to speak differently. I learned to think differently. Now, as I look ahead, I see endless possibilities. I want to travel, study, work, and connect with people from every corner of the world. English has become my bridge to all those dreams. And to think, it all started with a simple decision: to give my full effort for just 3 months. 3 months of focus, immersion, and courage changed everything. I can't wait to share the final chapter of my journey, because if I could do it, I truly believe anyone can. Chapter 5, the final test. The final challenge came when I had to give a presentation at my new job. The topic was simple, but the pressure was real. I would be speaking in front of people who used English every day. I spent days preparing, writing my speech, and practicing in front of a mirror. I recorded myself, corrected mistakes, and refined my pronunciation. I even timed myself to make sure I didn't speak too fast or too slow. The night before the presentation, I couldn't sleep. I felt nervous, but also proud. 3 months ago, I couldn't form a full sentence. Now I was about to stand and speak to a professional audience in English. When the moment arrived, I stood tall, took a deep breath, and began. My voice shook a little at first, but as I spoke, my confidence grew. I could see people nodding, smiling, and taking notes. That gave me energy. I remembered to slow down, to breathe, to focus on my message instead of my fear. I finished my talk with a short Q&A. I answered every question with clarity and even added a touch of humor. When it was over, the room applauded. My manager said that was one of the clearest presentations we've had. I smiled, not because I was perfect, but because I had faced my fear and succeeded. That presentation was more than just a work task. It was proof that everything I had done in those 3 months had worked. I had built my skills brick by brick, using every resource I could find: music, movies, books, apps, people, and daily habits. I didn't waste time looking for the perfect method. I just practiced every single day, and I never gave up. I learned that progress comes from consistency, not magic. Anyone can do what I did. You don't need special talent. You just need a clear goal, strong motivation, and the discipline to show up even on the days when it's hard. That day, something else changed. I stopped seeing myself as a learner and started seeing myself as a speaker, a communicator. someone who could share ideas, explain thoughts, and build relationships using a new language. That shift in identity was a final piece of the puzzle. Once I believed in myself, everything else became easier. I no longer hesitated before speaking. I no longer translated in my head. I just spoke, and it felt natural. That's when I realized fluency isn't about knowing every word. It's about being able to express yourself clearly and confidently. After the presentation, my coworkers came to me and said, "You speak English very well. How long have you been learning?" I smiled and said, 3 months. They couldn't believe it. But I knew the truth. I had lived every one of those 90 days with purpose. I had challenged myself, trusted the process, and grown stronger with every step. And now, I was ready for the next chapter of my life. A chapter where English was no longer a goal, but a part of who I am. Chapter 6, Teaching Others. After achieving fluency, I felt an urge to give back. I remembered how lost I felt when I started, and how hard it was to find real, honest advice. So, I began to document everything I had done. I wrote blog posts, recorded videos, and even gave free online classes to help others learn English quickly and effectively. People from different countries began reaching out to me, asking for tips, encouragement, or just someone to practice with. It was beautiful. I wasn't just sharing grammar rules or vocabulary. I was sharing a mindset, a belief that learning fast is possible with the right habits. Helping others taught me even more. I had to reflect on every step I took. And in doing so, I understood my own process more deeply. I realized that most learners struggle not because they're lazy, but because they don't know how to practice correctly. They focus too much on textbooks and forget about real-life use. They wait until they feel ready to speak, but that moment never comes unless you create it. I told them the same thing I told myself. Speak from day one, make mistakes, get feedback, and never stop moving forward. Learning a language is like building a bridge. You don't wait for all the materials to arrive. You start building with what you have. My story began to inspire others. I was invited to speak at an online language conference. I shared my 3-month journey in front of hundreds of learners and teachers. The response was overwhelming. People thanked me for showing them that fluency doesn't take years. It takes the right approach and a lot of heart. Some even started their own 90-day English challenges. Just like I did, seeing them grow gave me the same joy I felt when I first started improving. It was a full circle moment. I had gone from a frustrated beginner to someone who could change lives through English. Of course, not everyone believed me. Some said, "You must be lying. No one learns that fast." But I didn't let that affect me. I knew the truth. I had lived the truth. I reminded myself that doubters often speak from their own fears or failures. I chose to keep my focus on those who believed, those who tried, and those who wanted to improve. I answered their questions, celebrated their small wins, and reminded them that learning is personal. What works for me might not work exactly the same for them, but the principle remains. Effort, consistency, and mindset are more powerful than talent. Today, teaching has become a passion. I don't do it for money. I do it because I know what it feels like to be lost, and I know how great it feels to find your way. English opened up the world to me, and now I want to help others open that same door. The journey didn't end when I became fluent. In fact, that's when it truly began. Because once you can speak a new language, you don't just understand words, you understand people. And that's the most powerful thing of all. Chapter 7, Looking Ahead. Now that I speak English fluently, new doors are opening every day. I've applied to international universities, joined global online communities, and started traveling more confidently. I recently took a trip to London and had no trouble asking for directions, ordering food, or even making new friends. Everywhere I went, I used English not just as a tool, but as a bridge to connect with others. I felt free from the limits that once held me back, and free to explore the world through language and culture. It's incredible how much your life can change when you commit to one decision. I also began studying other subjects in English, business psychology, and public speaking. At first, it felt intimidating, but soon I realized that learning in English actually gave me an advantage. Most of the best courses, books, and experts share their knowledge in English. Now, I can learn directly from them without needing translations. I've started taking courses from top universities online, improving not only my language but also my professional skills. I now dream bigger. I plan to start my own business one day, one that helps learners unlock their full potential, just like I did. But the most beautiful part is this: I no longer doubt myself. I no longer think, can I really do this? Now I think, what else can I do? That shift in confidence changed every part of my life. I speak with people from all over the world. I've made friends I never would have met. I can watch any movie, read any article, and understand it without help. Learning English changed my world, but more than that, it changed me. I'm stronger, more disciplined, and more curious than ever before. And it all started with a decision to give it my best for just 3 months. Looking ahead, I know there will be more challenges. There will be moments when I'll have to learn something new, face fear, and grow again. But now I have a system. I know how to break down a big goal into small steps. I know how to stay consistent. And most importantly, I believe in myself. That's the real gift of learning a language, not just the ability to speak, but the ability to believe that you can achieve anything you set your mind to. I've proven that to myself, and now I'm ready for whatever comes next. To anyone reading this, I say, don't wait. Don't let fear or doubt stop you. You don't need perfect grammar. You don't need years. You just need 3 things: desire, dedication, and daily action. That's how I learned English in 3 months. And if I can do it, so can you. Chapter 8, Overcoming Setbacks. Even though I had made incredible progress, the journey was not without setbacks. There were days when I felt stuck, when words wouldn't come, or when I misunderstood something important. Sometimes I felt frustrated and wondered if I was really making any progress. These moments tested my patience and determination. But I learned an important lesson. Setbacks are not failures. They are part of process. Every mistake, every difficult conversation was a chance to improve. Instead of giving up, I reminded myself why I started and focus on moving forward, no matter how slowly. One specific challenge was understanding different accents. While I could follow standard English, some accents sounded almost like a foreign language to me. At first, I avoided listening to those speakers because it was too hard, but I knew I couldn't limit myself if I wanted to be truly fluent. So I began exposing myself to a variety of accents, watching movies, listening to podcasts, and talking with people from different countries. It was difficult and sometimes exhausting, but slowly my ear adapted. The more I listened, the more I understood. That experience taught me that flexibility is key when learning a language. Another obstacle was dealing with moments of embarrassment. When you're learning fast, you'll make mistakes in front of others. Sometimes I mixed up words or used the wrong tense. Sometimes people didn't understand me. These moments made me feel vulnerable, but I realized vulnerability is part of growth. I stopped fearing judgment and embraced my imperfections. I even laughed at myself sometimes. This attitude helped me stay positive and motivated. I learned that people appreciate effort more than perfection, and that made me more confident to keep speaking no matter what. I also faced the challenge of balancing my English practice with work and personal life. It was easy to let busy days stop me from practicing, but I knew consistency was everything. When I first decided to improve my English speaking, I was both excited and nervous. I had spent years studying grammar rules and memorizing vocabulary, yet when it came time to speak, I froze. I would try to form sentences in my head, but by the time I was ready to speak, the moment had already passed. It was frustrating because I understood a lot of English when I read or listened, but speaking was a completely different challenge. I realized that knowing English in my mind wasn't enough. I had to find a way to bring that knowledge out through my voice. I started by exposing myself to as much spoken English as possible. I watched movies and series in English, but this time I focused on how people spoke instead of just reading the subtitles. I listened to podcasts where native speakers talked naturally about everyday life. I noticed how their speech flowed, how they used contractions, and how their tone changed with emotion. I began repeating short sentences out loud, trying to match the pronunciation and rhythm. This simple act of mimicking helped me train my mouth and ears to work together in English, and little by little, I started to sound more natural. Although I didn't have many opportunities to speak with others in English at first, I knew I had to find a way to practice daily. So I began talking to myself. I would look in the mirror and describe what I was doing, what I was thinking, or how I felt about my day. It might seem silly, but it worked. I practiced constructing sentences and saying them with confidence. The more I did this, the more comfortable I felt using English in real situations. I learned that fluency doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being consistent. Another thing that helped me was recording myself while I spoke. At first, it was strange hearing my own voice, especially with my accent, but over time, it became a valuable tool. I could listen and notice my mistakes, correct them, and track my progress. I would choose a topic, speak for 1 or 2 minutes, and then listen carefully. This helped me become more aware of how I sounded and what I needed to improve. Over time, my confidence started to grow. Improving my English speaking wasn't about becoming someone else or hiding my accent. It was about building confidence, practicing every day, and accepting that mistakes were part of the journey. I wasn't perfect, but I was better than before. That was a first step. I had started my journey not with a teacher or a class, but with determination, my voice, and a belief that I could speak English clearly if I didn't give up. Chapter 2: Practice with Real People. After gaining more confidence by speaking to myself, I realized that the next big challenge was talking with real people. It was easy to talk when no one was listening, but having a real conversation was different. I felt nervous, afraid of making mistakes or not being understood. However, I knew that if I truly wanted to improve, I had to face that fear. So I looked for people who could help me practice. I joined online language exchange communities where I could speak with native English speakers who were also learning my language. It was a win-win situation. We both helped each other grow. The first few conversations were awkward. I often repeated myself or searched for words, and sometimes I completely misunderstood what the other person was saying. But the people I practiced with were kind and patient. They didn't laugh at my mistakes. In fact, they encouraged me and corrected me gently. These experiences showed me that speaking was not about being perfect. It was about communication. If I could express my ideas, even with a few errors, that was a success. Every conversation taught me something new and helped me feel more relaxed when speaking English. To make the most of these interactions, I prepared topics in advance. I wrote down phrases I might use or questions I wanted to ask. This helped reduce my anxiety and made the conversation flow more smoothly. Sometimes we talk about daily life, hobbies, or our cultures. I learned how to use everyday expressions and idioms that I had never seen in textbooks. I also picked up on informal language, which made me sound more natural. It was during these talks that I realized how alive and dynamic English really is. Another great benefit of practicing with real people was learning to listen and respond quickly. In real-time conversations, there's no time to translate everything in your head. You have to listen, understand, and answer right away. This was difficult at first, but the more I practiced, the faster my brain got at processing English. I started thinking in English instead of translating from my native language. That was a big milestone for me, and it changed how I approach speaking. By practicing with real people, I discovered the true purpose of learning a language: connection. Speaking English became more than just a goal. It became a way to meet people from around the world, to share stories, and understand different perspectives. I still made mistakes, but I stopped letting them control me. The fear faded, and in its place grew a sense of freedom. I was finally speaking English with real people, and it felt amazing. Chapter 3: Building Vocabulary Naturally. One of the biggest problems I had when speaking English was forgetting words. I would be in the middle of a sentence and suddenly forget the name of a simple object or action. It was frustrating and embarrassing, especially when I knew I had studied those words before. That's when I realized that learning vocabulary through lists and memorization wasn't enough. I needed to learn new words in a more natural and meaningful way, through context, repetition, and real-life use. I began reading short articles, watching videos with subtitles, and listening to stories in English whenever I heard or saw a new word. I didn't just write it down. I looked at how it was used in the sentence, what words came before and after it, and what tone the speaker used. I wrote down full sentences, not just a word, so I could understand its meaning clearly. Then I tried to create my own sentences using that new word. This helped me remember the vocabulary better and use it correctly when I spoke. To reinforce what I was learning, I kept a daily journal in English. Each day, I wrote a short paragraph about what I had done, how I felt, or what I had learned. I made sure to use the new vocabulary I had picked up during the day. Writing helped me organize my thoughts and express them more clearly. Later, I would read my entries aloud to practice pronunciation and fluency. It became a habit, and over time, I saw my vocabulary grow and my confidence rise. I also started using flashcards, but in a smarter way. Instead of just writing the word and its translation, I included an example sentence, and sometimes even a drawing or photo to make it more memorable. I used spaced repetition software to review the cards at the right intervals, so I wouldn't forget what I had learned. This technique made a big difference. The words stayed in my long-term memory, and I was finally able to use them when I spoke without hesitating. Expanding my vocabulary naturally changed everything. I no longer struggled to find the right words in conversation. Instead, I began to express myself more clearly and creatively. I understood jokes, metaphors, and even slang. Learning vocabulary became exciting because I was no longer doing it just to pass a test. I was doing it to communicate better. Speaking English felt less like a task and more like a real part of my life. Chapter 4: Improving Pronunciation and Accent. As I got more comfortable with speaking and vocabulary, I started paying more attention to my pronunciation and accent. I realized that even when I used the right words, people sometimes didn't understand me because of how I pronounce them. This made me feel discouraged at first, but instead of giving up, I decided to work on it. I knew I didn't need to sound like a native speaker. I just needed to be clear and easy to understand. I began practicing by listening and repeating. I chose short videos or dialogues and repeated each sentence out loud, trying to match the speaker's tone, rhythm, and pronunciation. I noticed that English has many silent letters and sounds that blend together. For example, the word comfortable isn't pronounced the way it's written, and contractions like gonna or wanna are used in everyday speech. By repeating them over and over, I began to train my mouth to produce those sounds more naturally. Another helpful technique was learning phonics and the International Phonetic Alphabet, IPA. It helped me understand how sounds are formed and where my tongue and lips should be. I practiced specific sounds that were hard for me, like teach R and V. I also paid attention to stress and intonation, how the pitch goes up or down in a sentence. These little details made a big difference in how I was understood. I recorded myself reading text and then compared my voice to native speakers to see where I could improve. I also used tongue twisters to train my pronunciation. They were fun and challenging, and they helped me improve my speed and clarity. I would practice phrases like, "She sells seashells by the seashore," or "red lorry, yellow lorry every day." At first, I stumbled a lot, but with practice, my mouth got used to moving in new ways. My speech became smoother, and I began to feel more confident even with difficult words. Improving my pronunciation didn't mean losing my identity or my accent. Instead, it meant becoming more understandable and confident. I learned to embrace my accent as a part of who I am while still aiming for clear communication. Pronunciation practice became a regular part of my routine, and the results were obvious. People understood me better, and I felt proud of how far I had come. My voice in English was becoming stronger, clearer, and more expressive. Chapter 5, Thinking in English. One of the biggest breakthroughs in my English journey was learning to think in English. At the beginning, I always translated from my native language before speaking. This slowed me down, caused confusion, and made my sentences sound unnatural. I knew that if I wanted to speak fluently, I had to stop thinking in my own language and start thinking directly in English. It sounded difficult, but I was ready for challenge. I started small with everyday thoughts and simple phrases like, "I'm hungry, it's cold today," or "I need to buy milk." Saying these things in my head throughout the day helped me build a habit. After some time, I took it further. I began to describe everything I saw around me in English. When I walked down the street, I looked at people, buildings, the sky, and narrated what I saw in my mind. The woman is wearing a red dress. There's a man riding a bike. Or, the clouds look heavy. Maybe it will rain. I was training my brain to create sentences automatically without going through my first language. This made speaking faster and more fluid. It didn't happen overnight, but every day my thinking became more natural in English. Reading and listening also helped me think in English. When I read a book or listened to a podcast, I paid close attention to the way sentences were formed and vocabulary used. Then I tried to use similar phrases in my own thoughts. For example, if I heard someone say, "I'm feeling under the weather," I would remember that and use it later instead of thinking, "I feel sick." I started collecting natural expressions in my mind and using them in my thoughts. This helped me sound more like a native speaker and less like someone who was translating. I also started practicing English thinking games. For example, I would choose a random object and try to describe it for 1 minute without stopping. Or I would ask myself a question like, "What would I do if I won the lottery?" and answer in English in my head. These little games kept my mind active and helped me become more creative with language. They made me realize that I didn't need to wait for a conversation to practice speaking. I could practice anytime, even in silence. Thinking in English changed everything. It made speaking faster, listening easier, and expressing myself more naturally. I no longer needed to search for words or worry about grammar rules while speaking. My mind had begun to process English in real time. That's when I knew I had reached a new level, not just of speaking, but of truly living in the language. It felt like English had become a part of me. Chapter 6: Creating a Daily Speaking Routine. Consistency was a key to everything I had learned so far. Speaking English once a week was enough. I needed to speak every single day, even if just for a few minutes. So I created a daily speaking routine that fit into my life. I made sure to include different types of speaking practice: talking to myself, shadowing native speakers, repeating vocabulary aloud, and even doing short video calls with language partners. I treated it like going to the gym. It didn't matter how tired I was. Practice was part of my day. I started my mornings by saying a few positive sentences in English. Things like, "Today is a new opportunity to learn," or "I will do my best today." These short affirmations helped me start the day with motivation and got my mouth moving in English early. Then, during the day, I try to describe my actions out loud when I was alone. If I was cooking, I would say, "Now I'm chopping the onions," or "The pasta is almost ready." This made English part of my routine and helped me talk more naturally. At night, I set aside 15 to 30 minutes just for speaking practice. I would choose a topic like travel, goals, or news and speak about it while recording myself. Then I'd listen to the recording, take notes, and try again. Sometimes I also watched a short video clip and repeated the dialogue sentence by sentence, trying to match the pronunciation and tone. It became part of my evening ritual, just like brushing my teeth. Over time, I noticed my speech became smoother and more confident. On weekends, I added a special challenge to my routine. I would create a short story in English and tell it aloud as if I were speaking to an audience. This helped me practice storytelling skills, which are important in real conversations. I also joined online English speaking clubs where I could meet other learners and discuss interesting topics. These sessions gave me real interaction and the chance to use everything I had been practicing during the week. The most important thing I learned from my routine was that progress comes from repetition and patience. Even on days when I felt tired or unmotivated, I still showed up and practiced. Speaking English became a part of my identity, not just something I studied, and the more I practiced, the more natural it felt. My daily routine wasn't just helping me improve my English, it was shaping my mindset and building discipline. Chapter 7: Overcoming Fear and Self-Doubt. Even after all the progress I made, there were still moments when fear and self-doubt came back. Sometimes when I spoke with a native speaker or in a group, I would get nervous. My hands would sweat, my mind would go blank, and I'd start questioning everything I said. I worried about sounding foolish or making mistakes. But I realized that fear is a normal part of learning, and the only way to beat it was by facing it again and again until it lost its power. I reminded myself why I started this journey: to connect with people, to grow, and to express myself in a new language. I told myself that perfection wasn't the goal. Communication was. I began to change how I saw mistakes. Instead of being ashamed, I treated them as lessons. Every mistake taught me something. If I said a word wrong, I would laugh, correct it, and move on. I stopped apologizing so much and started celebrating the fact that I was trying, that I was brave enough to speak. To build my confidence, I surrounded myself with positivity. I followed English learning YouTubers who shared their struggles and tips. I joined communities where learners encourage each other. I even wrote down my own progress each week and read it whenever I felt discouraged. Slowly, I built a mindset that said, yes, I can do this. I am improving and I am proud. Confidence didn't come from speaking perfectly. It came from not giving up. I also learned breathing and relaxation techniques to calm myself before speaking. Before conversation, I would take deep breaths, smile, and remind myself that I was prepared. I practiced eye contact in the mirror, worked on my body language, and tried to enjoy the process. The more relaxed I felt, the more natural my English sounded. I discovered that people responded better when I spoke with confidence, even if I made mistakes. Overcoming fear and self-doubt wasn't about eliminating them. It was about rising above them. Every time I spoke English, even when I was scared, I became stronger. I became more open, more expressive, and more connected to the world. Speaking a new language was no longer a dream or a fear. It was a reality I was living. And I knew that with courage and practice, I could go even further. Chapter 8: Using English in Real Life. After all my practice, I realized it was time to start using English in real situations. It was easy to feel confident when I was alone, talking to myself or recording my voice. But speaking with real people, especially native speakers, was a different level. I knew that if I wanted to grow, I had to take the risk. So I looked for opportunities to speak English in real life. I joined language exchange apps, participated in video calls with other learners, and even spoke to tourists in my city. Every conversation was a step forward. I still remember the first time I ordered food in English at an international cafe. I was nervous, but I smiled and tried. "Hi, I'd like a chicken sandwich and a cup of coffee, please." The cashier responded kindly, and I felt proud. It wasn't just about grammar or vocabulary. It was about using my English to live. These small moments gave me real confidence. I started looking for more. I volunteered to help at events where English was spoken. I chatted with travelers, and I even wrote comments in English on YouTube and Instagram. Using English in real life helped me see the beauty of communication. I didn't need perfect grammar to connect. I just needed courage, clarity, and kindness. The more I spoke, the more natural it felt. I also noticed how much I learned just by listening during conversations. People used phrases I had never seen in textbooks, and I wrote them down to study later. My English started sounding more alive, more dynamic, because I was learning from real interaction. I also started doing practical things in English, like writing shopping lists, setting my phone and apps to English, and reading news articles aloud. This constant exposure helped reinforce everything I was learning. I no longer saw English as just a subject. I saw it as a living part of my everyday life. When I got used to seeing and using English everywhere, speaking became less scary and more automatic. By stepping into real-life situations, I broke the final wall between study and reality. English stopped being something I practiced and became something I truly lived. That shift made all the difference. It wasn't about being perfect anymore. It was about being present, using what I had, and growing through experience. That's when I started feeling not like a student, but like a speaker. Chapter 9, Measuring Progress Without Fear. One of the most important lessons I learned was how to measure my progress without fear or frustration. In the beginning, I constantly asked myself, am I improving? But I didn't always know how to answer. Some days I felt great, and other days I felt like I was going backward. I realized I needed a better way to track my growth. So I started keeping a journal. Every week, I wrote down new words I had learned, conversations I had, and challenges I had overcome. This helped me see that I was moving forward, even if it didn't always feel that way. I also began recording myself once a month, speaking about the same topic. Then I would compare it to the recording from the previous month. At first, the difference was small, but after a few months, I noticed big improvements. My sentences were smoother, I used better words, and my voice sounded more confident. Listening to my past self gave me proof that I was growing, and it motivated me to keep going, especially on tough days. Another method that helped me was setting small, realistic goals. Instead of saying, I want to be fluent, I said, this week I will learn 5 new phrases, or today I will speak for 10 minutes without stopping. These goals were clear, doable, and gave me a sense of success. Achieving them made me feel proud and helped me stay motivated. I celebrated every little win because I knew each one was part of the bigger journey. I also reminded myself that progress is not always visible. Some days you might not speak better, but your brain is still learning, organizing, and preparing. Language learning is like growing a tree. You don't see the roots, but they're growing deep and strong. I trusted the process. I accepted that mistakes and slow days were normal. I focused on consistency, not perfection. That mindset helped me stay positive and avoid burnout. Tracking my progress helped me stay on course. It reminded me of how far I had come and how much I had achieved. I stopped comparing myself to others and started focusing on my own growth. English was no longer a race. It was a personal journey. And every step, no matter how small, was a step in the right direction. Chapter 10, Becoming the Speaker I Always Wanted to Be. Looking back, I can hardly believe how far I've come. From struggling to say simple sentences to having confident conversations, the journey has been long but rewarding. I remember dreaming about being the kind of person who could speak English fluently, someone who could express ideas clearly, understand others, and feel proud of their voice. Today, I'm not perfect, but I've become that person. I've become the speaker I always wanted to be, not because of talent, but because of effort, belief, and practice. Becoming a good speaker isn't about speaking like a native. It's about communicating with clarity and heart. It's about sharing stories, asking questions, and listening with respect. I've learned to enjoy conversations, to be curious, and to laugh at mistakes. English has given me new friends, new opportunities, and a new way to see the world. And all of that started with a simple goal: to speak better. That goal changed my life. I now help others who are beginning their English journey. I tell them, don't wait to feel ready. Start now. Speak to yourself. Speak to others, and speak from the heart. Don't fear mistakes. They are your teachers. Don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to yesterday. Celebrate your wins, no matter how small. And most of all, believe in yourself. You don't need perfect grammar to have a voice. You already have something to say. English is more than a language. It's a bridge to the world. It connects people, ideas, and cultures. It allows us to learn, grow, and dream bigger. I am grateful for every hour I spent practicing, every word I repeated, every fear I faced, because all that effort built something powerful: confidence. And with confidence, anything is possible. I now feel ready for whatever comes next. My journey is not over. There is still so much to learn and explore. But I now walk forward with strength. I know that I have the tools to keep improving. I know that with each new day, my voice grows stronger. I am not just learning English. I am living it. And that, for me, is the greatest reward of all.